My name is Amanda Vaughn. I'm here in the home of Miss Amelia Boynton Robinson. This is a project for gerontology at Macon State College. And Miss Boynton, thank you so much for doing this for me for my project. I know that I'll get a good grade on this. Can I start first by asking you how old you are?
Well, I have a way of skipping a few months.
Okay.
Instead of, well, I said next year I'll be 100 years old because I just love being 100 quickly.
Oh, that's awesome.
But I will be 99 years old in August.
You have seen a lot of things in your life, and we have talked several times about things that she has seen and experienced in her life, and she's really interesting. Can I ask you to tell me a little bit about your childhood growing up?
About
your childhood.
Well, I have said so often, if I could die and come back again, I would have the same mother, the same father, the same sisters and brothers, and the same life. Maybe the only thing I would change is maybe I would stay in the schools until I got a PhD. I have gotten one, and I'm very proud of it. But my life has been beautiful. And where other people felt that certain things were burdens, I didn't feel that way. I mean, even through life, because I put myself into it, and I gave myself as I have seen it, and it did not make me feel as though whatever chores it might have been were burdens. Even at home, our mother and father had the whole family, and 8 girls and 2 boys. And many of them were older than the younger ones. But it was always a pleasure, even though certain things that I felt that I shouldn't do, such as wash the dishes, or maybe sweeping the floors or sweeping the porch. But as a child, nothing was a burden to me. I guess I was a happy-go-lucky child. And my first job was when I was about 5th grade. There were 2 people in our church who no doubt could have been ex-slaves. And they wanted to know how to read and write. And when I'd come by their houses from school, I would teach them how to read. That was my first job, and I enjoyed it very much. But coming up through at home, I think the way my parents lived and did caused me to be more liberal than I would have been otherwise. For instance, I have lived to see the time of people from World War I had nowhere to go.
Wow. And
my people kept their doors, their hearts, and their homes open. And if nobody could take them, they would. And one thing about it, in the small church that I came up in, the Church of God, they cared for not only those who were their members, but if they saw somebody who didn't have anywhere to go or they were going to be evicted, they would take them in and then ask the members of the church, I saw such and such a person, or Sister Bell is going to be evicted, and can somebody take her? But so often, my mother and father would hold their hands up and say, we'll take her. And our house was always filled. My father built this house when I was 4 years old, and it had 11 rooms in it. Wow. And it was always filled. It was either filled with young people or with older kids, young people who wanted to go to school. So that kept us with a house full of folk. And I can remember, I guess I was about 12 years old then, and my father and mother who had businesses, more than one business. And my father was a carpenter or contractor. But what he did, they took on other enterprises, and among them was wood wholesale and retail wood yard. Mm-hmm. He had to go out in the woods and mark these trees, and then he'd have people to cut the trees down and cut it into what is known as cordwood. Mm-hmm. And it would have to go to the river, put it on a barge, take it to Savannah, Georgia, and then there would be a freight train. The wood would go on freight train, or the car boxes. We call them car boxes. And that would go near Savannah, near our home, just about 3 blocks. And then they had to have a mule and wagon or horse and wagon to bring it to the wood yard. And one day my sister, who was about 10, went with him in the woods, and my father said, "Stay here at the house," that was in the country. And he went on with the man in the woods to mark the trees. And my sister, where he left my sister, was in a house where there were 3 children. Mm-hmm. And father, of course, went on with my dad. And my sister looked at these children, and they looked like they were not kept well. One of them had not had her hair combed in quite a long time, so she got the comb, and that's the first thing she did. Then she told my father, "Can't we take these children home?" And he talked with my mother, and those 3 children stayed there. And when I left to go to Tuskegee, they were still there.
Wow. Still
there at the house. There was an old lady who was there before my brother was born. He was still there. So they always, they don't pay anything, but just have a place to stay, and and all of us love you. So that was the type of atmosphere that I came up in. And I guess that's the reason why I gave myself in the movement to fight for human rights and for the voting rights, with no looking forward to reap anything. Right. And consequently, I'm doing that now. My father had a Model T Ford. His health was going down with what is known as rheumatism at that time. Mm-hmm. And he and my brother went west to find a place that would be kind to his rheumatism. Mm-hmm. And this new touring Ford is what they used. Now my mother never would try to drive the car. My father bought a horse and buggy for her. And in 1920 or 21, when women were given the right to vote, my mother took that horse and buggy and went from house to house, got the women out, took them down to the registration office to register. I don't know, this is in Savannah, and I don't know whether they were illiterate or what, but if they were illiterate, she would help them to know how to sign their names. And then when it was time to vote, she would take them to the polls. But now, in getting them registered, I would be in the buggy with her, and I would jump out at this house, knock on the doors or ring doorbells, and the women would come out. But my mother was very much an activist. She would not let people get away with anything unless he brought them to task.